ATP, what it do with your boy Claymore Rain, back at you guys with another one. Salute to all my subscribers. If this is your first time tapping into the content, I do invite you to go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Hit the bell icons as well, so you are getting alerts when all this content is dropping. So, following up, Floyd Schofield, we know Junior coming off a great victory, obviously. A few, what it was, I don't know, a week back, last weekend, was it? The weekend before last? I don't know. I'm kind of caught up. My weekends aren't like everybody else's weekends. So let's say last weekend, right? For argument's sake. Floyd Schofield Jr. had a great stoppage of Tevin Farmer, ultimately shaking up the space. Tevin Farmer being a formidable opponent, former champion, although he lost his last three fights, um, was looking good in his last three fights, two of them being Williams and Payton, and one of them being with the current IBF champion, Raymond Moratala. Great momentum that Floyd Schofield Jr. gets to build up off of, considering he was coming off of a little bit of a brand um recalibrating circumstances, right? Basically having to rebuild his brand a little bit based off of the strength that he was having to pull out of a fight with Shakur Stevenson's in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and also just last two performances or so showed him to be a little bit overzealous, jumped into a lot of shots trying to push the pace and push the action and fight and getting hit unnecessarily, having injuries that he didn't need to have, things of that nature, right? He got sat in his pockets on a fight as well. So just in general, just having to rebuild the reputation a little bit, and did a great job at doing that. Stopped Tevin Farmer inside the first 90 seconds or so, the first round, completely reshaping a lot of people's perspective on what this kid has and what his future looks like at the 135-pound weight class division. That being said, what was going to be and what is going to be the next step for Floyd Schofield Jr.? People have speculated all over the place. Obviously, a fight with Shakur Stevenson seemed to always be on the table for Floyd Schofield, being that he couldn't make that fight happen with Shakur Stevenson's in Riyadh due to some food poisoning or issues he was having, medical reasons that the athletic commission out there had to pull him out of that fight. Well, in an interview, very interesting interview from Floyd Schofield Sr., which generally starts off as a Floyd Schofield Jr., it still boggles my mind from time to time to understand how Senior has made his presence such a, just really overshadowing is the word to best describe it. Floyd Schofield Jr. in his ability to communicate for himself, to represent his own personality, to pretty much speak on his own behalf. And, incredibly enough, when you do hear Floyd Schofield Jr. speak, you tend to want to hear him speak more, right? Because he seems to speak more towards what you want to hear a fighter say. He wants to fight all the biggest fights. He wants to fight them now, not later. He has his own opinion, right? His own set of expectations for his own career that I think a lot of people in the boxing space would be interested to hear. But Senior seems to be very, although he tries to sell it as if he's protecting his son, there is a part of me that can't help but feel like there's an ego being fed here, right? There's definitely there's definitely a feeling of Senior liking the sound of his voice, right? Loving the sound of his voice, loving the sound of his opinions, his perspectives, and seems to be really enjoying the attention he gets through his son's talent in the ring. Granted, Senior trains his son and raised his son and probably put him in that position and gave him got him up to this point, right? You can't take that away from him. He's a father, right? But at some point or another, you'd want to see, and you want to see, if you're a boxing fan, you want to know what the fighter thinks, and you would like to believe that whatever they think and whenever they get a chance to speak, that it's not being influenced or a narrative isn't being driven by outside handlers that are pushing the fighter to speak one way or move in a certain direction. Senior gives that feeling regularly, as you see him consistently on social media, consistently on these interviews, and a lot of the times you'll see Junior in the shot, but he just can't speak, as you see Junior looking away towards the ground or trying to act as if he's preoccupying himself with something else or thinking about something else, as he focuses on respecting his father's right to speak and not cutting off his elder. um, his father, right? Respecting his father by any means necessary. Well, not to make this a long-winded situation, as of recent interviews happening for Floyd Schofield Jr., you'll see Senior in the picture, and Senior's communicated what he has planned for Floyd Schofield Jr. And it's very interesting. Not only is it interesting what he has planned, but also in how he plans on executing it. Recently, two specific interviews to be exact, one with the Boxing Voice and Ness, shout out to Ness over at the Boxing Voice, and one with my brother Mill City as well. Both interviews very interesting, but pretty much aligning with each other, where Seniors communicating a distaste of working with the WBC due to their strict or micromanaging style of regulating the fighters, whether it be rehydration clauses, certain weight stipulations, things of that nature. Now, guys, if you didn't follow before, during the Riyadh season situation where Floyd Schofield Jr. had fallen ill, people from Shakur Stevenson's team spoke towards the fact that they saw Floyd Schofield Jr. walking around in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and noticed that it looked like he was off weight, right? Looked like he wasn't going to make weight easily, as he seemed to be a real big 135 pounder. Now, guys, if you ask my personal opinion, I've always stated it. You can watch old videos where I state that I think Floyd Schofield Jr. is a big 135 pounder. I worry and wonder at how long he plans on staying in that division. Now, with this newfound fame and this momentum he's building off of, there's a lot of opportunities that seem to be opening up for him at 135. But like I said, as big as he seems to be getting, you have to ask yourself, how many more fights does he have left in the division before it starts to become a complicated situation where his health may be being compromised, the weight cut may be becoming a little more strict. And Senior seems to be veering away from the WBC, as he's complained about their weight restriction clauses and things of that nature, stating that, he's trying to paint this picture, in my opinion, projecting this idea onto or pushing this narrative onto the fan base that fighting for belts is like slavery, right? Paying this 3% on the sanctioning fees and things of that nature is something that, A, I guess is unfair to fighters, or B, is not something that he needs or that his son needs. Just making the fights is the most important thing. I'm going to be frank with you guys. As I'm hearing him speak, all I'm hearing him say to me is, my son's having a hard time making the weight. And now you want him to fight in the division, but you don't want any type of restrictions on the way he cuts the weight, or more importantly, gains the weight back. So now we might be dealing with a situation where Floyd Schofield Sr. is looking to have his son Junior weight bully people in the 135 division to go ahead and pad or build his resume, as he believes he now has a legitimate edge on the rest of the division. We know also that Floyd Schofield Jr. has moved up in the WBA rankings. He was a number 2 in the rankings before. So now with William Zepeda getting ready to fight Shakur Stevenson and sitting on an interim WBC title, he'd have been the one sitting there at the number 1 spot in the WBA rankings or sanctioning body. Naturally, for me, Floyd Schofield Jr. moves up to the number 1 spot in the WBA. The WBA put out information. I don't know if it was a statement exactly, but basically, rumor has it the WBA now applying a little bit of pressure to Tank Davis, Gervonta Tank Davis, who's the current WBA champion. He does have a rematch coming up with Lamont Roach that still hasn't been announced yet. I'm expecting that to be announced within the next week or so. That's another video as well. I want to kind of speak out on that announcement, and that's a very interesting situation. But nonetheless, it seems like the WBA may be on board to potentially be offering to either order a mandatory fight between him and Floyd Schofield, or at least apply some pressure to Gervonta Tank Davis to have him either defend the title against his mandatory, this being Floyd Schofield Jr., or maybe even threatening to, on the back end, on the consequences of not doing that, risking being stripped or forcing him to vacate that title. So Senior is anticipating an opportunity to show up very soon for Junior, and he doesn't want him to miss out on it. But he's communicated that he's very indifferent with the way the WBC carries and chooses to enforce their rules as far as weight cuts and things of that nature. If indeed it is what it looks like to me, which is that Floyd Schofield Jr. may be having some hard weight cuts, it may be about time. He's a young guy, 22, 23 years old, in that range. He's growing, right? Was a teenager, a young man, a few years ago, and now growing into his manhood, growing into his man strength. Um, Maybe having a hard time cutting the weight and stayed in the weight class of 135. As Senior makes plenty of excuses as to why he doesn't want to fight inside of these different sanctioning bodies, but at the same time pushing the idea that he still wants to fight with Shakur Stevenson. He still wants to fight with all these fighters in these, all the top fighters and champions, but he doesn't want to fight for their belts, as he tries to sell the idea that the belts come with rules, and this 3% is robbery and slavery and things of that nature, things that have always been part of boxing and always has been understood by every boxer. And if you guys follow Senior, you'll know that Senior has been campaigning on unifying and his son becoming undisputed and fighting all the champions. This is something he knew when he was saying that back then. So what changed for Senior today to be feeling the way he's feeling? I think that at times when it comes to situations like this is when the father-son dynamic, and we have to keep it real, this is when we start to criticize and scrutinize the situation. Because what is Senior doing that's benefiting his son, Junior? Is Junior benefiting by now being trapped inside of a box now and not being able to compete for belts, but instead still pushing for the fights to happen to pad his resume up? Junior doesn't seem to be on the same page. He seems to want to make the biggest fights possible. He communicated and did an interview with Mill City where he communicated he had aspirations of, pushing to become a WBA champion, and him and Abdullah Mason potentially fighting for a unification title fight, as Abdullah Mason is also being scheduled to fight in November to fight for a vacant WBO title between him and the UK's Sam Noakes, a title that was just vacated or stripped from Keyshawn Davis due to him losing it on the scale. He still pushes the idea of making the best fights happening, and he doesn't seem to have the stipulations of money restricting him or locations or rehydration clauses or things of that nature. But Senior seems to be hyper focused on pushing this narrative right now. I think it's interesting. We'll be keeping a close eye on it, obviously, trying to keep up as to what this really is going to add up to. Another interesting thing that Senior spoke on was, as far as the Shakur Stevenson fight is concerned, not only is he not interested in fighting for Shakur Stevenson's WBC title or working or fighting underneath the WBC sanctioning body's rules, but also speaking to the idea that he doesn't want to fight Shakur Stevenson anywhere else but Texas. So Shakur Stevenson, being the A side, the champion in this situation, loses his leverage, loses his ability to operate from an A side situation to where he's offering Schofield Jr. an opportunity to do something great for his career. And now Schofield Sr. would have you to believe that they're 50-50. There is no A side in that conversation, that they may even sell more than Shakur Stevenson. And all of this built off the back end of the momentum they built off of stopping Tevin Farmer. I think it's funny at times, but also I think this is what's wrong with boxing, right? These are the things that you see these fighters go through, as Senior now talking about championship belts don't matter and things of that nature. Why? Because he has a stoppage of Tevin Farmer and he wants to compete. He wants his son to compete in a 135-pound weight class division, a division which it looks like may be too much for Schofield Jr. to continue to keep cutting the weight to compete in this division. The logical thing to me would be to go ahead and move Floyd Schofield Jr. up before something bad happens, before he has a bad weight cut and some rehydration issues happen, and he gets hurt. He gets clipped and knocked out by an Abdullah Mason, or he gets clipped and knocked out by Gervonta Tank Davis. He messes around and gets in the ring with a real punch at 135, has a bad weight cut, and this could really hurt him in a bad way and really alter the rest of his career. Keeping in mind, of course, that Floyd Schofield Jr., as I thought, but would never have said, really suffered from a lot of depression dealing with the situation that happened from the Shakur Stevenson fight falling out, missing out on all of that money and the opportunity that wasn't there, and the way the boxing space was talking about him and pretty much calling him a duck and saying that he pulled himself out of that fight because he was scared to fight Shakur Stevenson and things of that nature. You can see at the end of the fight with Tevin Farmer the emotional release that Floyd Schofield Jr. had in the ring, and he communicated it quite frankly to the space that this was a huge relief and a huge monkey off his back, as the he was even considering, according to what he said to Mill City, he was considering leaving boxing. He said he didn't say this to his father, but he communicated on Mill City in an interview that he actually considered retiring out of boxing. So keeping that in mind and all those things that I just spoke on, having this kid stand in the 135-pound weight class division longer than he needs to be, the wrong stoppage, the wrong loss, the wrong experience inside of the ring can alter the rest of Floyd Schofield Jr.'s career, just based off of how this past year and a half has treated him on a psychological level, right? It is what it is. But I think it's interesting. Guys, let me know what you think in the comment section. Not comfortable with the rehydration clauses or the weight stipulations of the WBC. Belts don't matter anymore. He wants to only fight Shakur Stevenson in Texas. How do you guys reading into it? Maybe I'm reading too much into it. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Guys, once again, thank you to all my subscribers. If this is your first time tapping into the content, take an opportunity to go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Hit your bell icon as well, so you are getting alerts when all this content is dropping. Guys, remember, we're on live Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Tuesday evenings at about 9:30 to 10 o'clock in the evening, and Wednesdays and Thursdays, 11 a.m. until we're done, usually for about 2-3 hours. I'm trying to work on that time frame thing, but ultimately catch our lives there from time to time. You'll see me on there co-hosting with Blue Blood Sports as well. Stay with us. Keep those bell icons on. Put your notifications on, obviously, so you are getting a ring whenever we're dropping content like this and whenever we're starting our lives. I appreciate all you guys, man. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Until the next one, guys, it's your boy Rain. It's that ATP Combat Media Show. Until the next one, at this point, we out.